It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Conversations with Joan. Conversations with Joan will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life's Conversations with Joan. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in. Conversations with Joan focuses on topics that are important to your life, from health and wellness to professional development to personal well-being. Change makers join me to share their insights, tips, and strategies so you can thrive and live your best life now. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. Now, let's start talking. Many people want to change their lives, but don't know how to begin. According to today's guest, Alexis Fernandez Preiksa, you already possess the most powerful tool to get the job done, your mind. She joins us today to discuss how to enact change and improve mental, physical, and emotional health one day at a time. Alexis is a neuroscientist turned podcast host who is known for her tough love attitude and accessible approach to scientifically proven mindset hacks. She's the author of the book, How to Chase Change, 30 Days to Master Your Mindset. Welcome, Alexis. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on the show.
So, Alexis, many people, especially this time of year, they start to evaluate their lives and decide that they want to change something about it. Why do you feel that they are often overwhelmed at doing this or just at a loss of how to even begin the process?
Yeah, well, there's a few reasons for it. So especially in the new year, we think, okay, I'm going to completely overhaul my life, and we start writing down all these goals. And often we'll write quite an extensive list of things we're going to change, whether it be our eating, our training, morning routines, career, etc. And it's really overwhelming. And what we end up doing is we throw ourselves in the deep end. There's way too much that we have to work through. And because they're all new things, it requires a lot of focused attention that it's not only difficult, but exhausting. And then most of us inevitably fall off the bandwagon and we're back to square one. And then we think, oh, I'm a failure. You know, I can't do that. I'm not creative. I'm not a morning person, or I'm not academic. And we start to talk down about ourselves, thinking that we've failed, when in reality, we just have a bit of a flawed strategy. Because when you're bringing anything new into your life, a new habit, a new behavior, a new routine, you have to understand that it requires a lot of effort until it becomes subconscious. When you can outsource a job to your subconscious mind, then you can add more things in. The moment it's subconscious, it's simple. So if waking up early is really difficult, if you work on that consistently enough for about a month, eventually it's going to be easy for you. Then you bring in that next goal, that next habit, and then you continue to stack and layer on new habits when things have become automatic or subconscious. And that's how you can really start to implement change, instead of overloading yourself with, 10, 20 things and then feeling that it's the most awful experience.
Well, and I think the problem is that so many of us want this immediate response. We want to be able to say, okay, this month in January, I'm going to lose weight and I'm going to do all those things that you listed, where by chunking it down and taking that slower, methodical approach, we can get the job done, but it's just going to take a little bit of time to do it.
It does. And this is the thing. It sounds like it's the slow way, and people are really turned off by that because we all want change now. And of course, who wouldn't? If you can get it sooner, why not? But the main issue is that we've probably been setting ourselves these goals for more than just a year. It's probably been 5, for some people 10 or 20 years where they'll set the same goal, but they try to rush it. And then they never get there. Instead of stretching that timeline out a little bit, and okay, you don't get there in a month, but you could get there in 6 months' time, which is a lot faster than the 10 years that you've been saying the same goal every single January 1st. Mm-hmm. So I think we've got to be a lot kinder to ourselves with how we structure our goals in the short term, but we want to make them stick. We want to turn them into a lifestyle goal, not this milestone that we hit and then we fall back to square one.
I think weight loss is probably a really great example of what you're talking about, because we put weight on maybe, 10 pounds a year, and then you get to this point where it's like, I need to lose 40, 50 pounds, and we want to do that in a month, instead of reversing that process and maybe taking 10 pounds off of a year, but keeping it off then.
Exactly. And I love that you use that as an example, because weight loss, you look at your goals in two ways. They're either a milestone goal or a lifestyle goal. A lifestyle goal is something that you keep in your life forever, and a milestone goal is something that you only have to do once, and once it's done, it's done. So, for example, studying at university, or working towards running a marathon, or something that's just a one-off thing. With a milestone goal, it's easier to make your life difficult until it's done, because you think, well, I don't have to do this forever, so I can work through this really hard time and then it's done. But if you look at that from a weight loss perspective, if you think, okay, I'm going to give myself a month to be able to fit into this dress, you're torturing yourself trying to fit into that dress. And of course, what's going to happen at the end of the month? You're going to revert back to your old ways because it was such an awful experience. It was just really unpleasant. Instead of thinking, okay, how do I turn weight loss into a lifestyle goal? And for weight loss, for example, you don't want to be looking at what you're trying to get away from, which is, the particular body that you're not happy with. You want to be working towards a goal, thinking, for example, I want to increase my endurance, or I want to get stronger. I want to be able to do 10 push-ups. And when you have that different focus, you start to notice growth, you notice change in yourself. It keeps you motivated. It keeps you wanting to work towards that, because you feel that as you work towards something, you're validating yourself. And the bar can always be set further and further when you're focusing on things like strength or endurance and things like that. And so when people shift that focus, it actually becomes something that's super sustainable, and it becomes semi-enjoyable as well.
Well, and I think before we decide upon a program for weight loss or for whatever it is we want to achieve, I think we really need to start at the source, and that's the brain. And when we understand the way the brain works, that gives us an advantage for success. I think all of our attempts are going against the way the brain is wired for our survival.
Exactly. And you want to set yourself up to do well. If you're someone that sets the same goal again and again and again without ever looking at why didn't it work last time? Is it because I'm not good at resisting temptation? Is it because I can't say no to an invitation? Is it like, how do I set myself up by knowing what my weaknesses are? How do I work with my weaknesses so that way the next time I can really set myself up to succeed, because I can preempt when I would normally fail at something or when I normally give up.
We're talking about the change that is wanted, but what about when we're thrust into a situation like death, divorce, financial insecurity? How can someone get through those life-altering situations with what you're teaching?
That's a really, really great question, by the way. The more resilient you are, the easier it is to overcome, and I don't want to use the word easier because it's not necessarily easy, but the more capable you become and your brain becomes to deal with these difficult situations. So, for example, if you are always living a life where you are constantly focusing on growing in this area, putting yourself in uncomfortable positions, allowing yourself to be vulnerable, learning something new, you are training your brain to deal with the unknown and to work it out. So deal with something new, figure it out, deal with something new, figure it out. So you become quite resilient. And then when you get hit with an emotionally difficult situation, you've spent this time building resilience within your brain. And it might not be the same experience. So, for example, divorce or heartbreak versus working on, challenging yourself on different things. But it still helps you deal with things differently because of how you've wired your brain. If you are somebody that lives the exact same lifestyle, nothing changes, then you're more likely to be more reactive in the sense that you think you need to protect everything you have. And if you lose something, you lose a part of yourself. So that's why the idea of the book, How to Chase Change, came about, because I actually was in the lowest of low points. This is about 8 years ago in my life. Everything had gone wrong for me. I felt like I'd hit rock bottom. And my father said to me, you want to be the person to chase change, don't let change chase you, in the sense that I was in a position where everything had gone wrong for me and I felt like I was a victim to my circumstances. And he said, well, this is your opportunity to do these big things, to build up that resilience, move overseas. And I did. And, do all these crazy things where you teach yourself that even if things go wrong, you will be the one who has your back. Mm-hmm. And when you have that, you'll always feel protected by your own, resilience in your own mind.
Something similar happened to me. I started doing this work, which is a result of a lot of loss and trauma in my life. So when I started this, in a period of 5 months, my 23-year marriage ended. My mother died. My sister died. And I had already lost my father and brothers. So the life I knew was over.
Sorry.
And, you know, like you were talking about, you get to this point where you think there's nothing out there for me. There's nothing I can achieve. And in that, I call it, you know, the dark night of the soul, in that darkness, I made the decision that I couldn't continue the way I was. And I didn't know what a new life would look like, but all I knew was I couldn't continue that. So what you were talking about, resilience and taking baby steps, and with each baby step and success, when you realize that if I step out of my comfort zone and I face a fear and I survive that, it does build a little bit of a muscle. And the more that you do that,
yes,
the more you become resilient, as you said. So the life I'm living today, and I was actually thinking about this over the holiday season, had I succumbed to those feelings back then, and to be honest, I was considering not being here any longer, had I succumbed to those feelings, I never would have the life I'm living today, which is amazing. So I hope if anyone's listening to what you're saying, build that muscle step by step, but you will build it, and everything will change when you do.
Yeah, that's amazing what you're saying, and it's so true, everything you're saying, because you realize when you do build that muscle that you can trust yourself. A lot of people can't sit alone with their own thoughts. They don't trust themselves, and I think they think it's always going to be this way, but I want people to understand that you can change. The brain can be rewired and remolded again and again and again, and you can hit that reset button. You'll be amazed at how plastic the brain is and its ability to change. And you might be in a situation where you feel like you said, you can't keep going the way you're going, but where do you turn? And you can become your best friend. You can become the person that supports you. You can trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, you put yourself out there a whole lot more. And then, of course, when you do that, you become open to the best experiences, the best relationships, the best opportunities as well.
Well, I always say Nike had the best slogan when they came up with "Just Do It," because that's my philosophy now, just do it. But if someone's listening to you right now and they have a strong desire and they know they need to do it, but you know the way the brain works, and they're trapped in these thoughts and they're trapped in their fears, and maybe they're in an abusive situation or a bad job or whatever it is, and they want to, but they can't take that first step. How can they do it? Is there a strategy? Is there a tip? Is there something you can offer someone to help them take that baby step?
Yes, so there's a few different strategies, especially if you're in a situation where you feel absolutely trapped. The first one is to change your mindset. So, for example, I always talk about the difference between soft action and hard action. Hard action is where you're doing that hard thing, where you're going to the job interview, where you are physically going to the gym. But the soft action is all the things around it, which is still super beneficial because it's priming your mind to see this as a real possibility for you. So I'll give you an example, because there was one of my podcast listeners. She was in a very, very abusive marriage, and she had children, and she didn't know how to escape it. And one of her colleagues sent her my podcast, and she started listening, and then she ordered my book, but she ordered it to the office because she never wanted her husband to see that she was working on self-development. So she would read the book in her lunch breaks. And this is all kind of soft action in the sense that she started to change her mind to think what was possible for her. She wouldn't have been able to leave that marriage straight away because she didn't feel like she had those resources yet. But she started to read the book, and then she started to research more, and she started to really gain all the tools. Then she applied for a course, and she started, building herself up with her resources. And then she wrote to me and she said, I've left the marriage, I've got my kids, and I've never felt freer, I've never felt happier, but I had to start so small. I had to start at a point where there was a spark, and that spark, then I could, grow on that. So if you feel completely stuck, just start to do these soft actions, read the books, educate yourself in that field, and start to feel this is now actually possible for me. It's not the unknown.
And I think that's just so important. If someone is listening and, your story, my story, the story of your podcast listener, I hope it offers that person hope to see that by taking action, by doing something different, that's how you begin. And that's all it is. Just do something different and build that muscle of resilience that you were talking about.
Yeah, that's right. And It's these small little changes, but when you do it consistently enough, and you don't have to do it every single day, it doesn't have to be 100% hit rate. You don't have to be really strict, but when you do something consistently enough, you will notice significant changes. If you start doing something 3 days in and then you take 3 days off, you don't have to start from the beginning again. Just pick it up where you left off and keep going. Allow yourself the ability to have days off. Allow yourself, you want to factor that in, because we're all human. We don't need to be striving for perfection when we're trying to make a change. You look at anyone who's achieved where you want to be in your life, and there's so many hurdles for them to get to where they got. It's rare that you hear about someone's path to where they want to be and it was seamless and it was perfect. And that's what I want to explain in the book. It's, even if you've got a 50% hit rate on your goals, you're probably doing a whole lot better than what you did last year or the year before.
So, Alexis, you're known for your tough love. Why do you take that approach when discussing this topic and helping people?
Well, I personally like to take that approach because it kind of thrusts people into a bit of a realization of, I try and kind of give people a bit of a shake-up and think, the time is now. You have this one life. What else are you going to be doing with your time? I get so passionate about where people are at with their, emotional and mental health that it just comes across as quite intense and quite, I get very invested in my listener questions and things like that. And the way I look at it, the way I deliver my content, everyone's going to deliver their content in a way that they hope resonates with someone. Someone might listen to something being said 1,000 times and might hear how I say it and it finally strikes a chord. Or someone could listen to what I say and it doesn't work, and then they hear it delivered a different way and it strikes a chord. I think, it's a way of reaching an audience where this is striking a chord for them. And I would imagine it's the same with you and your audience. We all have a way of communicating to our audience, and they really feel it. And so they keep coming back and implementing what you're teaching them.
The book is How to Chase Change, 30 Days to Master Your Mindset. Alexis, where can our listeners go to learn more about you and your work?
So if they want to listen to the book, you can access that book anywhere you listen to audiobooks. The podcast, I won't say the full name because it's got a swear word in it, but it's Do You Bleeping Mind? And if you want to know more about the podcast and myself and the books, it's at the website dyfmpod.com.
And once again, that website is dyfmpod.com. Alexis, in about 30 seconds or less, what is the takeaway? What would you like to leave our listeners with?
I think, that's a really good question. I think I would like to leave the listeners with, no matter where you are, no matter what your starting point, you are capable of creating change for yourself with the resources that you already have. You don't need more time. You don't need more money. Just with your brain and with your mind, you are already at a starting point where you can achieve more. So it's never too late. You're never too far gone. There's always space for change for anybody.
Alexis, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I hope you found the show informative. At Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, we believe that knowledge is power. Take what you've learned, apply it, and live your best life now. Remember that the information provided is the opinion of our guest and should never replace the advice of a professional who knows your personal situation. If you'd like more information, visit our website, CYACYL.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on the site, listen to past shows on demand, read our digital articles, and be sure to subscribe to our mailing list. Until next time, this is Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.